Hey, Kevin, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you noticed, but good news, in case you wondered, the COVID pandemic emergency is over. Tell us what you think about that. If you didn't know, I don't know. I don't know if you noticed, but good news. I don't know if you noticed, but good news, in case you wondered, the COVID pandemic emergency is over. Tell us what you think about that. If you didn't know, you're free to go. 800-859-0957, 800-859-0WJR. All right, so President Biden, Kevin, reluctantly signed this law that terminates the COVID emergency effective immediately. This happened on Monday. It's strange to me, though, Kevin, because a lot of people completely disagree. It's completely along party lines, too. So every member who is a Democrat in the House of Representatives representing Michigan, they voted against ending this emergency, and every Republican voted for it, that the emergency should be over.
Breaking news, the COVID pandemic is over. The president called it on Monday. And boy, if that didn't seem like big news or breaking news, perhaps that's because most Americans thought the pandemic emergency ended a year or so ago. I don't know. Everyone I know, and I mean everyone I know, talks about the pandemic in the past tense, and they have for months and months and months. So I don't know. What is the White House up to with Monday's breaking news announcement? Did something big and new in the data change, or is there a political reason to end the pandemic? Let's bring in John Sellek, CEO of Harbor Strategic Public Relations. Good morning, John. How are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. I do know the President Joe Biden has been postponing his announcement that he's going to run for president. He keeps saying that that's his intention, but an announcement will be coming later. That may be for a political advantage in his own party. Do you see any politics in this ending of the pandemic, or do you think this is more likely a medical decision?
Well, we'd probably need to have a blindfold on and maybe some noise-canceling headphones at the same time to not see the politics in this situation. You know, the House is controlled by the GOP now, and they put up a pretty simple bill. From my understanding, it's one sentence and says the national emergency on COVID is over. And the president said, I'm not signing that. That's rushing things. I wanted to wait another month or two and maybe even extend some things, some aspects of it. But after the House GOP ran the bill and let 197 Democrats stand with President Biden and oppose it, President Biden kind of said, oh, wait a minute, I think I will sign this. And so Chuck Schumer was able to tell his caucus, hey, the president's going to sign this, so when we get to vote on it here in the Senate, we're going to protect some Democrats. And they got 68 votes, which means a whole bunch of Democrats voted to end the national emergency because they knew Joe Biden was going to sign it. So we see the politics in that situation. Once Biden tipped his hand, the Democrats in the Senate, more of them joined him. And then once again, seemingly for at least the second time, the president has said he's against what the House GOP was doing and then burned a bunch of members and then turned around and signed the bill, in this case and in the D.C. crime bill.
Yeah, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. What are the prevailing winds out there with the American people, with the voters? Do you think Joe Biden has kind of read into the fact that the country has moved on and it's time to get with the majority of where Americans are in this?
It's so obvious by the choice that he made to go ahead and sign the bill and not make a fight over this. He sacrificed a whole bunch of House Democrats in the process, but clearly their internal deliberations indicated to the president that not only anecdotally has most of America moved on. It doesn't mean we're not washing our hands more, that we're maybe even not shaking hands as much, or in some situations, we think, oh, I probably should take a test because I don't feel quite right. And we've got a lot better treatment. So it's not to say that America hasn't adjusted a little bit to this situation to protect themselves. But it's clear the president decided, well, I've got to sign this. And if we are constantly reading the tea leaves, Tom and Kevin, about whether the president's going to run again, I've always thought he was going to run again because this is a guy that's wanted to be president, I think, since birth, and he's in the White House, so why leave? The fact that he's signing this bill is telling us all we need to know. He doesn't want to go into a reelection with any kind of stink on him for not ending the emergency, even if it's so plainly obvious that the vast majority of Americans, even some Democrats, they stopped wearing masks, they moved on, because there is a way to deal with this now going forward. And we saw that the same way on the crime bill with Washington, D.C. They were going to reduce all the penalties for a lot of crimes and lighten up on crime. And the Republicans said, no. It's like a somewhat unknown fact that Congress has a lot of control over the city of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a normal place. And he ended up having to sign that bill that said, no, you will stay tougher on crime. So we keep seeing lots of indications that the president is running for re-election, and he's reading the tea leaves and he's getting the polling. And we know what the polling's saying by the way he chose.
Yeah. So I keep going back to this, the whole definition of emergency. Emergency to me means, drop everything else. The only thing that matters right now is this. And to me, COVID has long passed that emergency stage, right? So why is there such a huge disparity, this big disagreement between Democrats and Republicans on what now is the definition of an emergency?
Well, that's true, and where that's indicated, where there is at least a sizable chunk of the Democratic base that the president needs going forward, especially to avoid getting kind of challenged in the primaries. A sentence right out of one of these stories: the White House issued a one-line statement Monday saying Biden signed the measure behind closed doors. So he's making the choice he knows he has to make, both from the polling and the anecdotal evidence that people are ready to move on from an emergency. But he's also indicating he doesn't want to upset the far left of his base by not making a big show of signing the bill. So he's trying to cover all the bases like any good politician does. But yeah, I think it's so obvious that that emergency period of time has ended.
Well, that fact alone, that the White House only made a very brief mention of this on Monday, there's no fanfare associated with it. Doesn't that alone tell us there's no more emergency?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually thought the level of coverage was so low and the headlines were so bland and vanilla. It was as if, even the media covering the president understands that it's not a clickbait issue anymore. It's not an issue that people are really freaking out about. We certainly have friends out there that are still feeling very cautious. I'm still respectful of people I see. If you're wearing a mask, I'm not going to argue with you about it. That's your choice. But we don't see masks very often. We don't see those kind of things. Hopefully Americans made some choices to be, a little better at washing your hands and some other things, being more aware of your personal health. But it's now moved with all the treatments available and our ability to handle this situation in a non-emergency format. We should. I think, we know that once government gets a little extra power and the ability to jump through hoops without having to follow a lot of regulations, they kind of like that. And so they don't want to let go of that. But I think the president recognized that was going to be something he was going to be attacked on constantly by the GOP, and he tried to take that off the table by signing this bill.
I think Joe Biden's
going to tip your head to Kevin McCarthy on that front.
I think Joe Biden's going to say that he shepherded the country through this pandemic, and this is a big win for him. This is one of the highlights of his presidency. We'll see if that flies with the American people.
Afghanistan. John Sellek, CEO of Harbor Strategic Public Relations. Good to talk with you again, John. Thanks.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, have a good one. 800-859-0957. Love to hear your take on this. Are you concerned that the emergency is over, or do you think it's finally over? 800-859-0WJR. Controversy and confusion continues to swirl around this Texas